WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. I know I have been threatening to span beyond the globe of sports, but this is certainly a week that allows me to catch up with all my football buddies, of which there are many, and I like them all, and I value their opinions, and I follow them all on Twitter. This guy is one of my favorites. He has been a long-time Yahoo guy now at Pro Football Weekly, and you can follow him there, as well as out on Twitter at Eric_Edholm. That's Edholm. Been doing it a long time, for 2 decades now. And, Ozzie Newsome getting all these high marks everywhere, Eric. And you, of course, the architect of that 1996 retrospective a couple of years ago that so many Ravens fans have crowed about. This is sort of the last act in the war room of a guy who sort of defines the war room, right? Like, name me anyone this side of maybe Polian or maybe Jerry Jones and Jimmy back in the early 90s when the Herschel Walker thing went down, but in the modern era that's known as winning the draft every year.
Yeah, and right. If this was his farewell show, my friend Dan Kadar had a great line. Ozzie played the hits, right? I mean, this and I wrote about this. To recap the draft a little bit, look back at what he did this year and what he's done for years. I mean, this draft has Ozzie Newsome all over it, and that's not to take away from the Ravens staff and Eric DeCosta who's stepping in and all that. I mean, Ozzie year in and year out, I remember people always sort of giving him like the B- grade the day after the draft. The solid crew for the Ravens. But then you'd see all these guys, these contributors who came out of the 4th, 5th, and 6th rounds, and a lot of good 1st and 2nd round picks too. Some misses, we know that, but just hit after hit after hit after hit. He's like, it's Wade Boggs, right? I mean, you just keep getting those singles, and every now and then he pops one. So, yeah, it was, to me, this crop is going to be very interesting, and I think he left the team in very good hands.
Well, before we go judging it all, and we're going to peel back the whole onion here, I don't know how much I'm going to get around the league with any of you guys, because it's easy to do 15 minutes on the Ravens, after this, right? But when you come back to Ozzie and where they sat a week ago, and what we talked about for 4 months, which was the 16th pick, the 16th pick, the 16th pick, and all those slotted picks, and they didn't get, comp picks the way they usually do in the marketplace for losing the Assemiles and the Wagners and the Jensens and all these guys they always lose. But this year, somehow, if you were to have clicked your heels together on Thursday morning and come back on Monday and said, they drafted who and how many? It really is quite an impressive haul of human beings that they have infused into the building here just on the draft alone. Guys that they get to pick from. And the more you pick, the better chances you have. That's a simple numbers game, right?
Yeah, and they trust their staff. That's why I think you make a good point with the compensatory picks. They always nobody has had more compensatory picks in the history of the NFL than the Baltimore Ravens. Since that was implemented, they have worked that system beautifully to where they were willing to let go at least one more free agent than they brought in and bring those picks back. Short of that this year, what do? They trade down, they move up, they move back down. They work the board in their favor, and all those day 3 picks they got, I think they got some pretty good value there. I mean, look, have I loved every move they've made this offseason? No. Obviously, the wide receiver position and the offensive line stand out as 2 areas where you could say, I don't know what they have. I'm not really sure what they have. Did they draft and sign some free agents at receiver who, to me, are, I don't want to say square pegs and round holes, but just sort of, I'm curious to see how it all fits. I don't know that they still have the big plays in them. But overall, man, I love the way, like you said, they kind of worked it. They got a number of picks. They got a quarterback. They got tight ends. They got all the things that they've been, needing and also good at picking for the most part. So, yeah, it was a fascinating crop.
Well, and if the numbers dictate for them that they do well in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round, that to get 3 of those guys in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th rounds sort of trumps picking 16th instead of 25th, or 83rd instead of 72nd, or whatever. Whatever. They kept backing up and picking up these picks, and it just sounds like, well, they just gave him a 4, they just gave him a 5, they just gave him a 6. Until you look up and they got 7 picks on Sunday, they turned that into 8 picks. I mean, it's an outlandish kind of a haul, but it also says that you don't really like your roster much. That you want to come in here and stir things up and bring in competition, and nowhere is that more evidence than when you light the fire under Joe Flacco and wake up the entire dude. I fell asleep. I mean, you know what I mean? After the 29th pick, it was 11:20. I had a long day. I just dozed off. I mean, my laptop was out, my TV was on, the whole deal. I just sort of they finally picked him, and he backed up twice, right? I mean, it was a crazy night, and I'm like, well, it's 29. And I woke up, and literally Lamar Jackson was crossing the stage, and there's purple. And, I'll never forget it. It was very sort of Twilight Zone-y, and I think every Ravens fan, including, and I don't know Joe Flacco's story, is going to have a story with that, but when you saw the Ravens go on the clock at 11:36 or whatever it was, 10:36 for you because you're in Central Time here. But, that really signaled something that, for Ozzie in the last draft, boy, this is guns a-blaring to take a gander on this quarterback that's going to be debated and continue to be debated. But this was not very Ravensy. This was a little outside the box.
Yeah, it was. And, it reminded me, and don't take this the wrong way, listeners, but, it reminded me a little bit of when Teddy Bridgewater went with the 32nd pick a couple years ago. Now, Teddy suffered a catastrophic knee injury. He never quite fulfilled that potential in Minnesota, but it felt the same in the sense that there was this quarterback that was picked apart throughout the draft process, right? Teddy obviously went to Louisville, too. That's really the only thing they have in common, different players. But, when the Vikings got him trading back into the first round, it was a very exciting pick at the time. This was a quarterback that the so-called gurus loved, and the NFL may have been a little bit slower to embrace. And we were seeing Lamar through 31 picks. I mean, I kind of thought he would be a first-round pick. I kind of thought he would be off the board by, say, the 25th pick, which is where the Ravens ended up choosing first. So I was surprised he was there, and I thought there was a decent chance that was going to happen, that some team was going to trade into those final few picks. I had pretty good authority. The Vikings were going to stay at 30. They liked what they had off it, their options there at 30. So I kind of felt like it was either going to be New England at 31 or 32, with the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, I don't think the Patriots are going to do the Ravens any favors, so they were eliminated in that scenario from Baltimore's standpoint. But
the Ravens dealt 2 picks that I thought when they dealt it, with the minute they dealt it, I thought, well, until you find out who they're dealing it to, you think that's going to be for Lamar. Someone's going to come and get the quarterback. That was a dream scenario that he was sitting there at 16. When it happened, I thought, New England's coming. We're going to get 2 1s, or I don't, something cool's going to happen here.
Right, absolutely. And so the way it all worked out, I think that the value is exceptional. I understand you have to trade up and give up some picks to get there, but this is fun. And you can see a path where Lamar can take over in 2019, and you can see some excitement in the building, and the lack of big plays the last couple of years, especially last season. You can picture now a scenario where Lamar Jackson, flawed as he may be, I think he's really good, but still has some work to do, can ignite this offense. And you put him out there. I mean, look, I covered the Eagles in 2009. I was the NFC East writer, and I saw how they sprinkled Michael Vick in. And this is James Urban, who was the quarterback coach now in Baltimore, Marty Mornhinweg, who was the offensive coordinator, now in Baltimore, same position. They worked it, and he didn't throw it a lot, but he ran the ball and just gave you a snapshot of what could be. And I think we're going to see something similar. I really have a feeling you could see a series or 2 of Lamar per game. Maybe not right away, but it's coming. I think it's coming.
Well, are you of the mindset that Flacco's done, that he can't win 12 games anymore?
I think we've seen the best of him. I like Joe Flacco. I'm not a Joe Flacco hater. I don't think he's a terrible quarterback. I think people do give him somewhat of a raw deal. I think he finished last season much stronger than he started it, and not with a lot around him, with a lot of pieces missing, a lot of injuries, a lot of shortcomings on the roster. So that being said, I think this is the right move. I think this is, and you go in a different direction style-wise too, and that's okay. And I think there's a scenario too where Lamar Jackson can really benefit from being incorporated into an offense where he's got to learn some of the things that he didn't do in college, and they can also open their minds to things that he did do and reinvent things a little bit.
Eric Edholm does it as well as anyone. The National Football League coverage, all of it at Pro Football Weekly. You can find him out on Twitter as well at Eric_Edholm. That's EDHOLM. And he was watching all of this happen. Dude, it is crazy that every single one of you guys that I bring on, and there probably will be 100 over the next month, 25 of you a week coming before me to discuss all of the same topics, that not once will Hayden Hurst's name be brought up first, right? I mean, and Morningwick kidded around about it. You know how weirdly awkward Marty is,
Yeah.
At the press conference about it. But it is the God's honest truth that the number one thing we could be talking about here wouldn't be Lamar Jackson if he weren't a quarterback, and that they had dealt to draft some Davenport rush edge or whatever the thing would have been that they would have dealt up for and traded the two away. But instead, it's all Lamar, Flacco. But part of whether Flacco ever gives the ball to Lamar, because Flacco will have to play poorly to not be the guy. If Flacco goes out and wins 12 games this year, they're not going to take a $19 million cap cut to put a kid in who's a might be, And a might be that, by the way, Eric, every single team in the league passed on him once. So let's start with that no one really believed all the way in him. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been on the board at 31. So, but all that being said, Flacco to from where he was 15 weeks ago to where he is now, weapons, Crabtree, Smokey Brown. They go to New Orleans and get Snead. They draft the tight end first. Now, they do give away the second round, and they do create competition. And they did give away the second round next year. He's under contract for $28 million more next year as well. But all that being said, this has been a hell of a haul all the way along. But Hurst is a big part of this because he can't be Matt Elam or, Brashad Perriman. He has to play for either one of these quarterbacks to work, right?
Yeah, I agree. And you're right. It's fascinating to think that taking a tight end at 25 who was pitching in the minor leagues 5 years ago, who, showed up on South Carolina's campus, haven't played tight end or football for that matter since high school. For him not to be a story tells you a lot about the pick that came after him. It was that surprising. So Hurst is a great story. I can't wait to see how he works out. He's a fun kid. He's got a great deal. 25 years old, whatever. He's going to be, turning 25 pretty soon here. That's a concern. Like, he's got a limited upside. He's not going to necessarily turn into Greg Olsen, I don't think. I don't think you need him to either. I think he can be a very good two-way player, give them a great third down option, a chain mover, as well as a red zone guy. And he plays with some fire, too. You turn on the tape and you see a guy who is a finisher. I mean, really, he knocks some dudes over. He is a blocker. You don't see a lot of two-way tight ends in the NFL anymore. They aren't out there. And I think he's got that potential, and he can get a little better, too. So for a team that, may have those offensive line questions, you put him out there, he's going to help the run game as a blocker. He's going to help stay home as a pass protector, too. Those are the little things that get overlooked. I don't think this is the Matt Elam of tight ends. I really believe that it would be surprising to me, everything he's come through to this point and everything he's shown in 3 years of college football, really the last two, I'd be surprised if he wasn't something. May have been a tiny bit of a reach at 25, but I had him in my top 35 or 6 prospects. So it's a good player that I think they'll rely on.
Eric Edholm joining us here from Pro Football Weekly. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Al's Seafood down in Essex. I'm going to start telling Eric about the crabs and the crab cakes and the jumbo crabs and that it's crab season. I'm going to let Chad the Crab Man tell you about it in the commercials here at WNST.net. They've been doing it longer than anyone at the foot of Stemmers Run at Eastern Avenue. Go see Chad the Crab Man at Al's Seafood in Essex. While you're down in Essex, stop by, get a pizza too. Pizza John's. Don't forget them right down the road. I have not had the ravioli. I'm going to get the ravioli. I'm going to watch a Caps game there one night is what I'm going to do. Stay tuned on my Twitter and my Facebook for that. Back River Neck Road, they've been doing it down there for 50 years. Nobody does it better. My wife's favorite pizza, my mom's favorite pizza. Go see and eat and drink and have fun. You'll dig it too. It's Pizza John's. Eric, for all of this haul for Ozzie and where they were 16 weeks ago and where they are now. The fact that Orlando Brown was one of the kids I was stalking at the Combine, thinking he was going to be the 16, the fact that they got him too and a legacy kid, then they go and get another tight end in Andrews that a lot of people liked more than Hurst. Quite frankly, I've had a handful of people say that to me. They really did do well in those first 2 days to address things offensively, and I don't know whether Brown's going to get on the field, but they clearly believe in him enough to spend the 83 pick, right?
Yeah, and let me work backward. I think Hurst is a better player than Mark Andrews. But as Eric DeCosta said in his press conference, Mark Andrews reminded him a lot of Dennis Pitta, and me too. I mean, I watched him and thought, Todd Heap, Pitta, that type of player, maybe not Todd Heap, but a little bit like that. And you know, okay, if he's that, that's great. I mean, Pitta was a steal at 104th pick or whatever, and Andrews can be the same at 86. And I think let's put that to the side. He can be a good player. He can be a good slot receiver. That's really what he is. He's a big slot receiver. He goes from catching passes from one Heisman Trophy guy in Baker Mayfield to Lamar Jackson and another one. Obviously, Joe is going to be a bit part of that
and
too.
And a Super Bowl MVP, but we don't want to let that get in the way. Let's not bring that up anymore, you know?
That's a pretty good quarterback legacy. He played with a college quarterback in high school too. I forget who, but yeah, so right. He's going to be part of that. Working the other way around, though, Orlando Brown, I mean, it's absurd to me that he is the 83rd pick in the draft. I said all along, you know, I thought even before the Combine workout, I thought, I don't know that he's a first-round pick. That was the discussion we had in February. Was he a first-rounder? Some people said you put him at guard, you put him at tackle, you do whatever. You know, I still didn't see a first-round pick. Then the Combine workout happened, and everybody freaked out. Oh, my God, it's historically bad. He looked fat. He looked out of shape. He looked terrible.
Yeah, don't screw up your job interview, though, right? When you screw up your job interview, this is what happens, right?
I heard he interviewed pretty well, though. I think.
No, I mean, you screw up your job interview by not being able, you know, the Combine is your job interview. He left the Combine with the same thing I thought. I ran into him in the airport. I mean, I've been emailing back and forth because I knew his dad. I had pictures. Yep. He's a great kid. I mean,
absolutely.
And he's different than his dad. He's bookish, you know, to some degree. He's really a neat kid. But I felt awful for him. I mean, I ran into him in the Indy airport, and the whole headline of the day, he was the story of the day, how bad the draft was. You know, I mean, how bad the Combine was. And if he comes into the league and plays well, he'll be sort of the anti-Mike Mamula, right?
I think so. And that's the thing. When he had the bad workout, and he met with, I talked to one team who said, our first question was, why weren't you ready for this? You know, and it was like, that's what he was getting, not just the media scrutiny and the fan scrutiny, people laughing at him. Oh, my God, what is this pathetic guy? He also got it in those 15-minute interviews where 95% of the questions were, what happened out there? So, yeah, it's been bad. And like you said, he's a smart, introspective kid. He's been through a lot. His dad died at age 15, or when he was 15. You know, and yet the story is incredible. He was born, I think, you know, 3 weeks after Jonathan Ogden was drafted, after Ray Lewis was taken. You know, he grew up in that Ravens system there. It's amazing to think how, you know, by the end he was coming around the facility as a 9 or a 10-year-old and all that. So he comes back. This is the team he wanted to go to. There was very little secret about it. Ozzie throws him a lifeline, and I think he's going to be a good player. I'll say it. I think he's going to play like a second-round tackle. And that's where they'll start him out, right tackle. If not, you put him at right guard, and he's a mauler in the run game. I don't know. I have a good feeling this is going to work out well. Wow.
High marks for Ozzie Newsome here all the way around from Eric Edholm. He's out of Pro Football Weekly. You can follow him there. All right, let's get off the Ravens unless there's anything else you want to say about the Ravens, because there's plenty to say about the Ravens. But, boy, there were 31 other teams out there, and I know you monitor the whole league. You know, through and through, we expected certain things to happen early. You start to rip up the mock drafts all the way around. But, boy, every franchise has a hell of a story. And one of the things that I would say to you, Eric, and I'm a baseball guy here, and I did kid Hayden Hurst about being able to pitch for the Orioles, is there is no hope here with the baseball team right now, right? And with the Ravens, it always feels hopeless, but then you realize over the weekend that you have very, very competent, professional people running this joint around here. But the other 31 places, for the most part, other than Cleveland and, you know, a handful of other sort of weird circumstances, everyone has a story to tell that we're going to win 10 or 11 or 12 games this year. Everyone. And that is I guess why the ratings are up and business is booming all of a sudden, and all those conversations you and I had back in the fall about the knee and the bad news and all that stuff, it feels like the flowers blooming again here for the league for all these teams because everyone feels like they had a good draft, right?
Yeah. First of all, let's just quickly talk about that. The TV ratings for day 3 of the draft, right? With guys who will be cut in training camp. I mean, guys who won't even make it to training camp. The day 3 TV ratings are ratings that a lot of other sports would love for playoff games. I mean, that's just the reality of it. This sport is not dead, okay? I mean, we think we get it, okay? Did it have the last couple of years have been a little tough and all that? But you're right. I mean, I just look back, and let's start with the AFC North. Let's start with the Ravens division rivals. Cleveland obviously gets better. Did they make every pick perfectly? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if Denzel Ward was the right choice at 4. I happen to think he's pretty good. We know Baker obviously is going to be debated for years. But I
was going to run smack and say Lamar Jackson might be the better quarterback of the two of them 5 years ago.
That's a stretch for me. But I did say this. I had Baker as my number 4 overall prospect, and I had Lamar as 17th overall. So, there's not a whole lot separating them in my mind. I don't think it's a massive cavernous difference. So, if you told me in 5 years that Lamar was the more electric and more impactful player, I wouldn't be totally stunned. So,
well, Baker Mayfield's going to have to deal with a whole bunch of things. First off, structure. Sure. Second off, losing. Third off, competition. All sorts of things are going to happen. Finding the bench there because Tyrod's going to be the better player, week 1. So, all of that being said, I think it's going to be a cold splash for him, and all that number one. Nothing's easy in Cleveland ever, and I would bet against that kid. I hated that pick as a matter. I hated that pick. I would have taken the sanest. I would have taken the Darnold kid just because he seems the sanest and the quietest to me, and the kid that went to Denver. Okay, God bless you. You know what I mean?
Right, yeah. See, I'll disagree with you on that, and then, we'll reel this back in a few years, and one of us is going to be wrong, and that's cool. That's what the draft is so exciting is because everybody has a strong opinion, and you look back and you cringe at your opinions 3 years later. I look back at my 2014 mock drafts now, and I go, what in the world was I thinking? So I think Baker is good within structure. I think some of his best plays came within the flow of the play. Did he have some improvisational skill? Absolutely. Is some of that going to be limited? Because his athleticism is nowhere near Lamar Jackson's. It isn't. I don't care what anyone says. And he's not Johnny Manziel to me. Does he have his warts? Yeah. But, the Steelers drafted a quarterback. The Bengals took one late. So every single team in the division drafted a quarterback this year. I don't know if Logan Woodside is going to be beating out Andy Dalton, but you at least can see the fingerprint of the AFC North got some passers in this draft. And, 4 years from now, those guys could, at least 3 of the 4 could be their team's respective starters. That's pretty interesting to me.
I said Denver. I meant Arizona. I meant Josh Rosen with the press conference and speaking out. And I would just say this for these quarterbacks. There were so many questions on all of them. I'm sort of skeptical of all of them. You know what I mean? Like, yep. I didn't get the vibe that any of these guys is a sure thing. And I really thought that the Ravens would be going and getting a Kyle Lauletta. You know what I mean? From a Giants perspective, that made all the sense in the world. And I think from the Ravens perspective, if you would have told me on Thursday that that's what would have happened, I would have said that makes all the sense in the world that they would do that. But the Lamar Jackson thing was so outside the box that's not normal. And I think, for Cleveland, the Baker Mayfield pick follows the long line of Johnny Manziel, right? Of you're going to come in and couch and Brady, you're going to save the place. Boy, that's just a whole different place than I think where Lamar Jackson is, which is you're going to infuse the place with energy and learn from a Super Bowl MVP.
Yeah, right. No, and interesting you brought up Lauletta because the two teams that now everyone connected him to the Patriots because he sort of seems Patriots-ish in a lot of ways, but the two teams that I had heard that had actually quietly done a lot of work on him, and I know some people who know some people, if you want to say it that way, were the Washington Redskins and the Baltimore Ravens. And so I kind of had that thinking too, like, all right, round 3, they're going to take him or Mike White from Western Kentucky or, one of those type of guys. And in a year or two, we'll see, right? So Lauletta was definitely on my Ravens radar, and he was definitely on my Redskins radar, and there were a couple other teams, including New England. So you're right. I didn't think the Giants were going to end up with him. So it's so fascinating to see how these quarterback pairings go. And you're right. is this class going to be special for as many that went high? I don't know. I had a bunch of them up at the top of my rankings because I kept kind of going through them and talking to people around the league. You look at next year's crop. I know we always say this. There's no star in the group. There's no clearly defined number one, but there's some depth, and there's some quarterbacks next year who will be interesting. If you're the New England Patriots, the New Orleans Saints, and you've got these aging starters, why do they pass on all of them almost? Danny Etling in round 7, I don't consider that a pick. So why would the Saints trade up for a pass rusher when they have nothing after Drew Brees, really? Nothing really. Same thing with New England. That's a question put in the back of your minds as you consider those teams needing quarterbacks, and there supposedly were a lot of them in this draft.
Well, especially coaches being married to quarterbacks, because you know as well as I do, Eric, that's a big, big part of this. And the fact that John Harbaugh's now married to Lamar Jackson, they haven't made the playoffs, they bet against their own quarterback to some degree at this point, certainly bet some collateral. I mean, one player they could have had on the offense this year and next year they gave away to have a guy who's either going to hold the clipboard or going to replace Joe Flacco. It is a little strange because there is that, well, if Belichick's going to go out with Brady, why does he care to groom Lamar Jackson and draft him at 31? Let's give Brady a running back instead. But there is something for me that even after all the hype around Lamar Jackson, everyone said no thanks. Everyone said no thanks to him. Jacksonville said, we like what we have here more, which is kind of crazy. But, you know, that happened all along the way, right?
Absolutely, and that's the interesting thing about this class. Like, do I think it was worth it for the Arizona Cardinals to spend, what did they give up, a third and a fifth round pick to move up 5 slots to get her? You know, I think it was 5 to go to the Oakland's pick and get Josh Rosen. Yeah, I do think it was worth it. In the end, if Josh Rosen is a bust, we're going to say what? That he went 10th, not top 4, and that they gave up a third and a fifth to move up. To me, that's worth the risk. Some of the other teams, though, Buffalo Bills, I'm looking at you, Josh Allen to give up a pair of second-round picks to move up that same number of slots, not that far ahead, number 7 overall, for a guy that was completing 56, 57% in the Mountain West, yeah, considered me a little skeptical. Consider me in a prove-it-till-I-see-it kind of mode right now. So, yeah, I think that shadow of doubt exists with all the quarterback picks that happen on this.
There's a third of the teams always looking for a quarterback, and a third of the teams are always desperate. And desperation, you know, this is what happens. Josh Allen happens when that happens. Hey, man, always great to visit with you. Keep up the great work. Anything you want to plug at Pro Football Weekly that you're working on? I mean, clearly there's 32 stories out there in the big world for you guys, right?
And yet I feel like I've written about 32 on the Ravens lately. I wrote my Ozzie piece, my Ozzie farewell piece. I thought I had fun with that. I traded texts with some guys in the organization and just sort of got their feelings of what Ozzie meant. I kept most of that private, of course, but as they asked me to. But there was so much respect for that guy. And I wrote about the Lamar Jackson piece and just a lot of draft looking back stuff at ProFootballWeekly.com. And, we get a little break. We get a little rest now.
Almost on the Ravens beat full time, at least for one weekend. Eric, take care of yourself.
I don't want to intrude on Luke here, you know what I mean?
He's working hard for the money. Believe me, he needs all the help he can get. I don't have enough arms, around here for all my Caps and Orioles and crazy and lacrosse and stuff that's going on around here. Eric, always a pleasure, man. Keep the faith.
All right, buddy. See ya.
Eric Edholm, Eric _EDHOLM, the way to find him out of Pro Football Weekly. I'm in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. It's all buyatoyota.com driven. Make sure you're checking them out as well and considering a Toyota when you're in the marketplace here. Last but never least, our morning newspaper. Each and every morning delivers to your email inbox, all brought to you by Planet Fitness at planetfitness.com. I'm headed to Laurel this Saturday for the Kentucky Derby, and the Laurel entries are on the front page of WNST.net as well as in our morning newspaper each and every morning delivered to you. They move to Old Hilltop next week, and we're going to be running the Preakness. It's Derby week. We got a Louisville quarterback. I'm going to be going to Louisville this week and talking to some folks down there about Derby coverage as well as Lamar Jackson. So plenty of discussion around here, all of it available online. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.